Hi, thanks for being with me today. I hope you're keeping well. I just want to say a few words today really on the life and death of Pope Francis. Now, I'm not Roman Catholic. I'm a priest in the Church of England, but I think regardless of our denomination, regardless of our church background, we can all agree that Pope Francis was a truly incredible and holy man, and very much worthy of our respect. So I just want to sort of honour him with a few words today, and also to say that, you know, if you are Roman Catholic, then please know that I want to stand in solidarity with you and to send you my deepest condolences in your loss, and really for all of us, whether we are Roman Catholic or not, to call us all to prayer for the Catholic Church as they now consider who they should elect as their next Pope. Pope Francis, as you probably know, was from Latin America. I think he was the very first Pope from that region of the world, and when he was elected as Pope, he wasn't universally acclaimed, shall we say. There were many people on both wings of the church who were pretty concerned about his election to that position of leadership. But I think that everybody would now agree that actually, whether we agree with everything he's done or not, he is a man who has left an incredible legacy and has had a tremendous impact, both on the church and in the wider world as well. Whilst it's true that Pope Francis hasn't really introduced any doctrinal change into the Catholic Church, he's certainly pretty profoundly impacted almost every other aspect of church life. I remember when he appeared on the balcony at St. Peter's when he was first elected Pope, and he came out and he stood on the balcony, and right from that very first moment there was the sense that he was going to be different, that he would take a different approach to that position. He was dressed very, very simply. When he addressed the crowd, he spoke in a very informal style, and he began by asking them to pray for him. So we knew that he was going to be different and that he would take a different approach to that position of leadership. And really from the very beginning, Pope Francis was extremely bold with his agenda. He was particularly bold with attacking church privilege and clergy privilege, was absolutely insistent that priests and cardinals and bishops in the church should not be enjoying positions of privilege, but instead they were called to be servant leaders. They were called to be shepherds of the flock, and that the role of clergy within the church should be hallmarked by gentleness and by grace and kindness and mercy. And Pope Francis, of course, really was known and will forever be known, I think, for his deep kindness. He was clearly a very, very kind man who wanted to stand with the poor and the marginalised and those on the edges of society. He was very, very insistent that it was right to empower the laity, that the power for mission and ministry in the church shouldn't just be with the clergy, but actually that the lay people, the ordinary people in the pew, as it were, the responsibility for mission really should be entrusted to them and should lie with them. So his legacy in part really was, I think, to empower laity and to challenge clergy to see themselves not so much as privileged people, but to be servants. And that is a truly wonderful legacy to leave. I think Pope Francis also encouraged debate within the church around theological issues had been stifled, I think it's true to say, for quite a long time, and power and authority lay with the theologians, and they dictated what was to be believed and what was to be practiced and what was not. But I think Pope Francis brought a breath of fresh air to that, and I think he actually really openly encouraged debate. He wanted to people to share opinions and new thoughts and new ideas, and whilst some of those would be accepted and some wouldn't, I think the idea of the Catholic Church being a sort of closed theological shop really was bypassed and overthrown during his time as Pope. And I would say certainly he will be remembered for, I hope, the Pope who changed the pastoral priorities of the Church. He very much wanted the Church, the Catholic Church, and all denominations, I suppose, to become truly a servant church, a church that would defend the rights of the marginalised, a church that would look out for and speak out for the needs of the poor, a church that would just really serve those in need. He talked, I think, on occasions about the church needing to become poor so that the poor could become rich. And I think also I've heard it quoted that he talked about the church as being a field hospital for the wounded, not a country club for the rich. I think that's a brilliant analogy, and I hope that he will be remembered for that incredible challenge that he placed on the institution of the Catholic Church to reform its pastoral priorities. He was driven by compassion, clearly. He wanted the church to be compassionate. He wanted the church to be relevant, and was concerned that the gospel message in its simplicity should be preached, and that the message of the gospel, the message of God's love and compassion and mercy and grace and forgiveness, shouldn't be obscured by the complexity of liturgy and philosophical and theological doctrines. He wanted the poor in spirit, in every kind of definition of that phrase, to have access to the gospel, God's grace in their lives. And I think Pope Francis also was extraordinarily brave in speaking out against capitalism. He spoke out against war. He spoke up in defence of refugees. He spoke up in defence of the marginalised in society. He spoke up in favour of tackling the climate crisis. He wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. And that, I think, is a major part of his legacy that I hope will continue into the future. Now, Pope Francis, of course, was not perfect. Nobody is, are they? And so there's no reason to expect our popes to be. And there are many who would criticise him quite rightly for not really advancing the role of women in the church and an understanding of the role of women in mission and ministry. People would rightly criticise him for not having driven church reform far enough, and I think that's a fair comment, and also the finances of the Roman Catholic Church, which are so desperately in need of reform, were not really on his agenda either. I'm not saying he was a sort of plaster cast saint, and nobody would want to claim that for him. But I think despite that, we can say that Pope Francis truly was a man of God, who was driven by his desire to serve the poor and to represent and lead a church that was driven by a heart of compassion and a heart for the poor. So I would say to you today that we really do need to pray for the Catholic Church today. The role of Pope is hugely important. It's important in terms of leading what is probably, I think, the largest denomination in the world. It's hugely important because of its political influence across Africa and Latin America, and across Europe, and well, every part of the world really. And it's hugely important culturally as well. It's so embedded into the cultural systems of so many countries that, you know, the Catholic Church is profoundly important, and we need to pray for those who will be involved in electing the next Pope. So if you are Roman Catholic and you're watching this, I just want to really send you my condolences and to say to you that I am standing in solidarity with you in your loss. Send my sympathies to you. And if you are not Roman Catholic and you're watching this, then I would please urge you to pray for our Roman Catholic brothers and sisters at this time who are grieving their loss of leadership, and for those who will be engaged in electing the next Pope. But perhaps most of all, just to say today, very simply, that I want to give thanks to God for the life of Pope Francis, for all that he has brought in his strength and his courage, in his weakness and his frailty as well. And just to say thank you to God for him, whether you are a Roman Catholic or whether you're not a Roman Catholic. I hope that you will join me in thanking God for his life and ministry. And may Pope Francis now rest in peace and rise in glory.